Hey, good morning.
So I have another job now. It's program committee chair. I'm also, no kidding, actually I'm the education committee chair. I'm also from Daiichi Sankyo, and I'm very pleased to be introducing the panel that you're going to hear. The title of it is, I'm going to have to read this, Catalyst for Innovation Collaboration, and anything that goes after the colon, the subtitle, I'm going to let you read. That's in your agenda. So I have the pleasure of working with this team of innovators here, who I'm going to let you, introduce themselves in a minute. But I want to start by thanking Lynn Ricker. She's a member of the Education Committee, and her team for putting this together. And I describe these people like they're horses in chutes at the Kentucky Derby. They are so ready to initiate this panel, and all of the prep calls. I think I've practically heard this panel several times already because they're all absolutely raring to go, and they want to share their ideas with you. But the coordination of something like that is an incredible accomplishment. I think you did a great job. So I think that you're going to really like this. So I want to think about. I mean, the way I like to think about innovation is in terms of the practical context. So if we think about the difference between the spring meeting, the ANC, we call that the what meeting. And in the PMRG Institute is the how meeting. So we all think that innovation is the right thing to do. We all put a high value on innovation, but one of the things that we sometimes don't think about is how to do it. How do you get it done? And that's what this panel is going to be describing to you today. So I'll get started by introducing Jim Kirk. So many of you, most of you probably know Jim Kirk. He's had a distinguished career at Idetics and Quintiles. He's also a major contributor to PMRG. He's been with us for a long time, and he is a former President's Award winner. And I'm encouraging you all to come to the awards dinner tonight, and we'll see what happens for Jim. But now, Jim is going to be taking kind of a long-term medical leave, but we're very pleased that we were able to encourage him to come back and participate on this panel. And he's one of the great innovators, so I think he's going to make a great moderator for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to introduce the rest of the panel. But thank you all for being here, and looking forward to a great session.
We are going to try to do something innovative in panel introductions, and that is rely on all of you, whether you're visual or verbal, to read the biographies that are in the book, and rather devote the time to introducing you to the innovation style of each of these individuals. Lisa Courtade is Executive Director of Global Market Research and Analytics at Merck, and describes herself as a purposeful innovator. Innovation not for innovation's sake, but to achieve a specific end. Mark Strong is the Director of Business Information and Global Market Research at Vertex. He describes his style as interpersonal and collaborative, wanting to bring people together to share and build new ideas. Charu Chaturvedi is the Senior Vice President of the Life Science Practice at Affinnova. She describes herself, interestingly, as a blank page innovator. Start with a clean slate and rebuild the whole question from scratch. And finally, Tim O'Rourke, who is the Chief Research Officer at Healogix, who describes himself, or agreed with my description of him, as a very energetic and persistent innovator. Persistent not in the sense of being limited, but of always driving forward to follow it through to completion. What we're here to talk about is what Dan Rohn described in his simple visual equation. The square for current practices plus the triangle for what's going to be new and different means we need to do something different in the future. So in essence, what we're going to talk about is how to do that plus sign, how to add innovation to what we're doing now. Just a couple of comments about innovation. If any of you have ever had to write a review for someone, or you've been reviewed, there are certain skills like communicator, manager, leader, collaborator. These are skills that we can readily identify, we can coach people on them, and they are demonstrated by a body of work. Innovator is one of the highest forms of praise we can offer each other, but it's just like wallpaper. I can't tell you what I like, but I'll know it when I see it. It is very difficult to demonstrate a body of innovation. Usually it's around events. That was a very innovative project or an innovative presentation that somebody gave. So we're going to talk about both the events and the body of work, both the individual people and the processes and skills that go into it. And we'll also talk about the roles of individuals, organizations, both employer and frankly, the role of the PMRG. We have divided this up into 3 sections. The shortest, although we could all spend several beers or glasses of wine making it the longest, is terror stories, war stories of why it's a problem. The second session will be more around success stories. What are some examples that our panelists can share with us that have demonstrated good innovation, productive, useful, and lasting innovation? And then finally, we'll talk about going forward and how to do things better. We will have traveling microphones, and we'll take questions at a couple of points during the session. If you'd like to speak, you don't need to do the usual drill of getting up to go to the stationary mic. Just raise your hand, and our roving reporters will track you down. So, Lisa, if I could ask you to start on why is innovation tough? What are the costs? What are the risks? Why is it that it's so hard to do?
I think there are a lot of reasons, and you mentioned that we could talk about this over beverages, and we did last night. Some of the biggest points of conversation were around there's less money, there are fewer people, there's less time. Anybody feeling that? And what happens is that creates a lot of pressure. There's also a lot of risk. Every day we hear of companies downsizing, being bought, people losing their jobs, and that creates fear. And what I see is a pervasive culture of fear where people, and I want to thank Dan for his comment about the saber-toothed tiger, they're fearing that tiger out there and they're retrenching and hiding under the rock and going back to, well, I'm going to stick to what I've always done. It's very comfortable. I know what my outcome's going to be. I know the agency I'm going to work with. That feels safe to me. And ironically, we're in a period of dramatic change, and the pace of change is increasing. And we should be preparing for that ice age rather than hiding from the tigers at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. By the way, could someone put up the first slide for me? Tim actually brought this to our attention, and it really captures the situation. Your proposal is innovative. Unfortunately, we won't be able to use it because we've never done that before. Kind of a classic story of innovation, and I think does a nice job of capturing what you're talking about. Mark, could you share some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think just following up on Lisa's comments, you know, there is a lot of fear around trying something new. We certainly all we prefer to do things the way that we've always done them, is comfortable. We actually at Vertex have a very thick binder called phase-specific market research. And literally the thought was, depending on where your program was, you could just turn to that page and this is the list of research projects you should do. But it doesn't always work that way, I think, as we all know. It's just a loose guide for sure. One of our corporate values, actually, there's 4 of them, and one of them is called innovation is our lifeblood. And so you see this on the wall everywhere, and R&D did a fantastic job for years following that model, and they came up with some really exciting, innovative molecules. A few years ago, when the company took on a much more commercial focus or added a commercial focus, you know, there was a lot of pressure, you know, could commercial and market research kind of follow that path that had been laid down? But, you know, the reality is you have to. As Lisa also mentioned, you know, there's a lot of companies that have come and gone because they didn't innovate, they didn't evolve. So it's really something that it just has to happen. But one of the things, you know, that we found is that innovation can't really be prescribed. It really has to grow out of a specific business need. For a while, we used to put in people's goals, you know, do one innovative project this year or something. And sometimes there isn't a need for that in a particular time frame. it really has to happen out of a specific business need. So.
Charu?
So one of the other, reasons that we want to make sure as as a function, we want to continue to innovate is really the role of market research and the fact that it is at risk of being diminished. Today we are the most critical pathway to the customer. The insights we gather should be the backbone of any business case around company investment. And yet there are companies that are talking about, outsourcing their marketing research function. There's a lot of market researchers that lament the fact that sometimes their marketers just want to do market research to validate what it is the marketer wants to go ahead and do. So it's not necessarily about really uncovering information that leads to smarter decisions. It's about executing something. Sometimes they feel marginalized and feel like an order taker. That's not fun for anyone. And I think, as a function, we have to make sure that we're constantly demonstrating the value and the significance of market research and that it can influence decisions and it should influence company-wide decisions. I think one of the issues is that there's a lot of legacy kind of thinking that's out there, partly because we used to operate with a different world order. We used to have lots of time, money, and resources. And as Lisa and Mark both mentioned, that's not the case. The other thing is, the ways that we operated, the ways that things have been done, has largely been because of the, ways that we could do them years ago. But just like the R&D function, just like the marketing function, every industry advances and evolves and changes. And I think we have to recognize that market research has actually gone through tremendous advancement. Even in the last 5 to 10 years, you look at just the advent of online technologies. I mean, it's incredible what people can do. And I think, we really do need to think about how do we do things differently. 2 examples I'll quickly mention, where we talk to some market researchers and they say to us, we're not looking to find the best answer, we're just looking to find something that's good enough. And I think what that reflects is sort of this older way of thinking of, let's just get something out there. And unfortunately, I don't think we have the luxury of not getting it right the first time. I think the second one that always makes me smile is a researcher telling us they're doing some qual research for message selection, but at the same time they're fielding that research, they're going to their design agency to figure out what do we do if that research doesn't confirm the direction we're already taking. And, even though in isolation these examples sound, kind of ridiculous, this happens. We're time crunched, we're resource crunched, but the reality is, it begs the question, why bother to do research at all? And so I do think we have to start realizing doing things the same way we've been doing them is not going to give us different results. It's not going to elevate the role of market research, and it's not going to get us a seat at the table. So I'm excited to be here to really talk about how do you do that.
So the leg of this initial conversation, I get the leg lap or the whatever they call that when you're doing the relay. I'm the 4th one in here. I'm supposed to turn the corner here and turn it towards the next thing. It's perfect for me because while we're pressed for time, right, if we took that cartoon and if I was to rewrite it, it would be slightly different. I like your proposal. Unfortunately, I don't have time to consider it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a more contemporary version of that same cartoon. And while all that's true, everything's going faster, everything's more digital, we have less and less time. From my point of view, this is still the best part. This is the fun part of what we get to do as an industry. I live to think about how to tackle problems, and it's actually not that hard. I don't know if I wanted to put Jim on the spot a little bit. I think a lot of people in the room know that Jim gave me my first job in the industry. He, along with a number of people here,
may I say,
he, along with a number of people, remember what I look like with hair. And back in the day, when we were at Idetics, we spent a lot of time. I don't know if you remember from back in the early '90s, there was this Christian bumper sticker, WWJD. We totally stole that at Idetics because we would say to ourselves as we were trying to solve problems, what would Jim do? And actually, we refined it a little bit more. We said, what 3 things would Jim do? Because there's always 3 things. But it's really as hard as that, taking a step back, thinking about what we want to do to try to move things forward. So while we're challenged, this is the fun part, and this is it's really not that hard.
So this will surprise you. I'm going to ask you 3 research questions here. How many of the people in this room would personally like to be more involved and more successful in innovation? Okay. How many of the folks in this room work at a company where innovation is sometimes difficult? Okay, and by the way, the reduction in the hands is directly related to whose boss is sitting in the room. I just wanted to be clear about that one. And the third question is, how many of you work in a company where there is a deliberate, organized process for encouraging innovation? That's unfortunate. And that's one of the things that we really hope comes out of this, is something of a call to action. My favorite phrase about innovation was when there was radio, no one knew they had an unmet need for television. And if innovation doesn't happen, we don't get to make the next step to things like discrete choice modeling or emotional mapping interviewing or any of the various innovations that have come along. So let's turn on the pain scale from the frowning face to the smiley face and talk a little bit about some of the success elements, the individuals, the organizations, and listen to some examples of real breakthrough. And Tim, you get to start this one.
So I've been asked to talk about incremental innovation, and I thought I would start my comments by pointing out that this year is the 50th anniversary of a book by a guy named Thomas Kahn, who wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution. And 50 years ago, before this book, this is actually, by the way, the book that gave us the dreaded business term paradigm shift, right? One of the most overused, overplayed. But before this time, just 50 years ago, when people actually took a step back and thought about, what happens when you do innovation, the only way people really conceptualized it was as incremental, adding to what you just have. Charu is going to talk about what Thomas Kahn was pointing out. Hey, there are these times where there are breakthrough innovations where you take a leap. So we're going to try to make the distinction between incremental and breakthrough. So as Jim pointed out, I'm fairly determined when it comes to trying new stuff. If something doesn't work, I'll come up with something else. And I've done a lot of choice modeling over the years, starting with the stuff that I did with Jim at Idetics with case-based discrete choice. And what's happened in the 15 years that I've been doing this kind of work, and it's an important approach. We still use it to this day. I think in the time that I've been part of this industry, it's gone from a method that some of us use to something that everybody does. And that's a good sign of something that's actually valuable, right? And through that process, we've also gone from the method dictating the scope of what we can ask to where we are today, where we've had these great breakthroughs in the analytics that we can use, and we're not limited in that way at all. We're limited by what's practical, what's pragmatic, and that's a great thing, because now the context of the research question is front and center instead of, hey, Tim, how many attributes can I have in this study, right? You don't want to do research like that. So that's been great over the course of my career, and it's certainly, I always like to point out that this is the discrete choice is a Nobel Prize winning idea. Dan McFadden in the year 2000 won the Nobel Prize in economics for choice models. So this is, in large part, the gold standard for how we approach predicting how a new product will be used and how what aspects of the product drive adoption. The thing is, though, nothing's perfect, right? And so specifically, I've been asked to talk about the dreaded notion of overstatement, right? It turns out there's this bias that people have in general and physicians have in particular. The way I always describe it is physicians are very reluctant to tell you that your baby is ugly, right? So they kind of overstate their interest in a new product. And I can tell you for sure, in a very persistent and determined way, we've tried just about everything that we can think of to compensate for this overstatement. So let me rattle through these things, because I've been in a number of different agencies and we've tried a bunch of different stuff. The one that I think has been the most useful is kind of a model on top of a model, right? Let's take all the situations where we've ask people what they'll do and compare it to what they did do and account for that in our adoption. And the cool thing that happened when we did that is that we learned that products that are really, really bad, right? You might remember Kinneret from our days at Cataysts, Jim. And products that are really, really good don't need this kind of overstatement, because if they're really good, it's the stuff in the middle that we have to deal with. But hey, unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff in the middle, so what do? Well, there's the classic divide by 3 that all of us hate because it feels so arbitrary and it leaves us all wanting. But I can tell you, because I've talked to everybody that will talk to me about it, it's a tried and true rule of thumb. Hey, take your predicted share and divide by 3. Still, we're not satisfied, so we'll ask people to think about, of all the patients that you have in your practice, what percent do you think would get it? So that gives us an index of it. We've done crowdsourcing kinds of questions. Hey, you told us you'll use this product at this rate. What level do you think your specialty as a group will? That gives us a good answer. I've done a dual response question. That's my personal favorite failure when it comes to trying to account for overstatement. Dual response coming from consumer packaged goods, you can say to somebody, hey, you're interested in this product, or which of these products are you interested in? Would you actually use it? Ask the question twice. Turns out when you ask physicians to do that, they get mad at you because they don't want to be asked twice. I just told you I was going to use this product. Why are you asking me again? The current state of the art is to try to make the decision as realistic as possible. And by that, hopefully this is something you guys can take away, get people to tell you what they would do today. In your internet survey, have them actually say, this is what I would do. Then, as you're showing them a new product, make them change that. That barrier helps them give you a more precise statement. And this has been a progression all the way through all this. And by no means do I think we're done. Discrete choice is a phenomenal approach, but it isn't what we're doing in entirety when it comes to decision making. So what's the future? I think over the next 15 years, I hope I can come back here and say, in the same way that I was saying today, that we're all using discrete choice. I'm hoping that we take the ideas of behavioral economics and say the same thing and bring that into our practice.
Mark, you described yourself as a collaborative and interpersonal innovator, and I think you've got a great case example of.
Yeah, so I was asked to give a real-world example from the client side, and I think it's an example of sometimes innovation is happening when you don't realize it. Because at the time, it didn't feel like we were being very innovative. It felt like we were having a fire drill, and we were all racing around trying to figure out what the heck we were going to do. But we have 2 products on the market right now that both of them are very unique, and they kind of force us to be innovative in how we think about dealing with our customers. So on one of these products, we had done lots and lots of traditional research around around 2 specific issues, actually. We had reams and reams of data, and we looked at it by every possible way that we could think of, and we felt like we really understood what was happening in the market. Well, we had a new CEO join us a little while back, and he asked some questions, and we gave him the answers that were based on our knowledge, based on all the traditional research we had done. And he said, that's great, but I really don't believe it. There has to be something else. And we said, well, there really isn't. And he's like, I don't believe it. There has to be something else. So we said, well, we'll go find out what something else is out there. So what we actually did is we went out and talked to 6 of our top vendors that are partners that we had worked with, and we said, we really need to take a look at this a different way. And a lot of them who had actually done research for us in the past on this specific issue said, well, don't we already know the answer to that? And we said, well, we thought we did, but we don't. So we actually asked these 6 vendors to work together on these 2 specific issues. We gave them all the research that had been done in the past, and we said, don't come back with the same answer. And they kind of looked at us and said, well, what if the answer is the same? And we said, well, just don't come back with that answer. So there was a lot of hesitation just about taking on the project. There's a lot of hesitation about working together so closely with a lot of these vendors who were direct competitors to each other. So I think a lot of that initial hesitation led to excitement. It led to a lot of energy amongst the team. They really had to collaborate. They had to attend each other's research. They had to ask questions. They had to build upon. At the end of the day, they all had to debrief and build upon each other's thoughts. And you could see a little competitiveness going on there, where they were trying to, initially I think they were trying to maybe kind of one-up each other. But what ended up happening is we came up with some really, really interesting new and novel ideas that were so much deeper than what we had had before. It really forced us to look at the issue a different way. It had a huge impact on the marketing team, on the sales team. It really turned everything around. And I think we had a good grasp initially, but by doing this and by bringing these people together and really saying, think differently, work differently, they really got to a deeper level. And I think even internally, despite the pressure and the intense focus on my team, I think it really gave them a lot of confidence. It gave them the feeling like they could do things differently, they could stick their neck out, and they could be successful in doing that. But to be realistic, it certainly was not the most cost-effective solution to this. So there's certainly a trade-off there too. Sometimes you want to do something that's different, but you have to make some trade-offs and say, okay, we're going to do this, but it's going to cost more. And so we're going to not do some other things that are maybe more traditional that you're comfortable with. So it's certainly a trade-off there.
Great example here. How many of us as research partners or suppliers would be comfortable working collaboratively with 5 other competitors? And how many of us as researchers for manufacturers would be comfortable letting the people who work for us, the vendors, work together collaboratively? So it's a real challenge to each individual in that story. Lisa, what do you have to add to this?
Well, I'll give a different example of bringing in innovation, and you would describe me as a very purposeful innovator. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cool stuff out there we can do, but if it doesn't add value to the business, it's a really tough sell. How many of you have worked on consumer advertising in pharmaceuticals? Good. How many of you are still awake? Okay. Have you ever experienced that once you have these great ideas and you put them through legal review and what you come out with tests kind of flat? Doesn't really discriminate, it's pretty vanilla. Okay, I see some heads nodding. That's never happened for us at Merck. But we have had some challenges. We have a process, a copy testing process that is burdensome. It's like a 45-minute questionnaire with lots of standard questions, but this is the way that we do it to try to tease out the differences between these concepts that look pretty similar. And the expenditure is high. The business risk is high. The business reward can also be high if it's done really well. I had an individual on my team who came back from ARF recently, incredibly excited about biometrics, with lots of pictures of brains lighting up and nodes you can put on your body, and how you could really engage and understand how people respond to and engage with your advertising, and what messages they're receiving, and what they're really looking at when you have all these things going on the screen. Again, Dan was very helpful. He circled what we were supposed to be looking at, but generally your eyes are looking in a lot of places until he circles that. So she wanted to add this into our copy testing. It's a great idea. It's a way to see how different are these concepts, what's working in them and what's not. You can imagine the reaction, though, of the commercial team. We've got a very tight timeline. We've got a standard process. Everybody's very comfortable with it. And we're saying we want to add some cost and time into this and give you these voodoo maps of brains. Trust us. So the challenge that I came back with was, okay, let's make it cost neutral. Let's test this out. let's run it in parallel to what we're doing with our current copy testing. Let's minimize the cost. The agency, and so the reason I wanted to use this example is it was really about partnership. So you're not much of a partner if you come in and you say, well, I'm going to triple your costs and give you something cool that you may or may not be able to use. It's a really tough business decision. But by neutralizing the cost, running it in parallel, when we got to the end of this process and the ad wasn't doing what we thought it would be doing, we were able to go back in, diagnose it, use the assets. Going to Costa Rica and filming is incredibly expensive if anybody's ever done that. So not having to go back and do that again and really drive your brand awareness, drive what's happening in the marketplace by using this cool voodoo, suddenly people could see the business value in that. And they got really excited about all the other places they could use it. And so it's a way of how do you frame that opportunity when you come in? How do you sell that into the business in a way that people can embrace it, get excited about it, see that vision, and want to do it more?
Great. Let's take a moment to see if anyone has any.
I think that
Yes.
I wanted to give an example of breakthrough innovation. And I think it's important to think about it because it kind of represents the more challenging option, right? How do you get buy-in in an industry that's risk averse? There's no time, money. And besides incremental innovations, how do you actually get buy-in for breakthrough kinds of innovations that are really challenging people's ideas? And we've done that, and that's why I want to share kind of the best practices that we use because I think they can be helpful for both the client side and the supplier side as you evaluate innovation. So what I'm going to talk about is the core offering of Affinnova. We are not a traditional market research company. We didn't come to market with the breadth of research products and services and try to adopt them to kind of the changing nature of our clients. We actually were founded by these MIT scientists that worked on the Human Genome Project, and they were using evolutionary algorithms. These algorithms have incredible optimization power, and they work off of a survival of the fittest model. So these scientists in the true nature of innovation thought, wow, we can use these algorithms to actually solve one of the most fundamental marketing and market research problem, which is there's too much to test. You know, marketers are always talking about let's innovate, let's brainstorm. With the advent of social media, there's more ideas than ever. Even after legal review, there still are parameters that you can kind of negotiate with and actually think of better ways to say something within, obviously, the confines of regulation. But if you have to throw away all that innovation, what was the point? And so what these algorithms allow clients to do, researchers to do, is actually not pick and choose and risk leaving good ideas on the cutting room floor, but really allow customers to optimize these large, ideas, spaces of ideas, combinations of ideas, and through this real-time evolution, identify the best of the best. It's not conjoint, it's a completely different model. So when you think about the pain point that it solves, it's very clear. The iterative test and tweak. The time, cost, and money that's required of that process that no longer is available to us. You think about the risk. We may not get the best ideas. We may put something in the market that's really not the best that we could have done. So in theory, you think, wow, you take that to market researchers, they nod their heads and say, this totally solves my pain point. This makes sense. I can see the benefits. And yet, when we introduced it to the CPG industry about 10 years ago, there's initial resistance. When we've introduced it to the pharma and financial services industry a couple years ago, we were also met with the same resistance. So we really gave some thought to what is this coming from? It's not that rational kind of business case type of resistance. It's really that emotional resistance. It's the fear of risk. It's the fear of being wrong. And so we thought about, well, how do we help our clients not associate innovation with fear and risk? Because the reality is innovation can be very concrete. It doesn't have to be this ambiguous, kind of loosely defined term. So we thought about, innovation should be repeatable. It can't just be a shot in the dark and you hope it works, the next time it won't work. It's got to be repeatable. It's got to be measurable. You've got to be able, if you're going to justify investing in a new process, you've got to be able to tell someone what the return on that innovation is going to be. You've got to be able to compare what that innovation gave you versus what you could have done. And then you've got to be able to show systematic improvement. That's the whole point of the process of innovation, that systematically you're improving things. So what we decided to do was do our own internal validation. We spent the time, the money. We did studies where we basically repeated the same studies to see would we get the same result. And we did. Great. That box is checked. Then we talked about how do you measure ideas? how do we make this easy for our clients to do? And we said, look, let's add an extra phase, a second phase to our research, and basically include measurement. Do a monadic, do a discrete choice, because it's a very robust way to concept test or compare ideas. And let's actually allow our clients to self-validate in real time, figure out, did these ideas really drive the innovation that we said it would? And actually do it at no cost to them. So we make it extremely easy to measure it. And then thirdly, by doing something like that, you've now created the body of innovation work, the ability to look back over hundreds of studies and say systematically, this is the improvement that this approach gives you over whatever else is compared. So in that way, we found that the light bulb went on. You know, people were earlier recognizing this is innovative, solves my issue, but what's going to get them to actually act? And it's really taking that fuzzy innovation, touchy-feely thing and making it concrete, making it really the business case that your research partner can go to their management with and say, this is why this makes sense. This is why we can quantify the benefit of it. And I think that that's an important way for clients to really evaluate innovation. I think it's also important for suppliers when you're bringing innovative things to market, whether they're incremental tweaks or they're breakthrough. You know, I think it's really important to do that due diligence on behalf of your researcher, your partner, so that they can make that business case internally.
Great. So let's see if there are any questions or comments that anyone would like to make. Again, all you need to do is raise your hand and the roving reporters will find you. I would like to pass along one question and ask a couple of the folks to comment on this. This is one that I got in prepping for this. A couple of folks asked me, is it possible to teach innovation? We can coach management, we can coach communications, we can coach leadership. Can we coach innovation?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think absolutely. Innovation is not about being a creative genius. There are people like Steve Jobs that are creative geniuses, and they're just fine doing their own innovation. But innovation really is about coming up with lots of ideas, and those ideas come from different sources. Not everyone knows what everyone knows, so you've got to bring in people to collaborate to really get to innovative ideas. And then you've got to have a process in place to evaluate them without, you know, getting rid of them or overlaying assumptions. So I think being innovative is really about allowing for ideas to come to the surface and then using processes to figure out which of those ideas will really give you the greatest advantage or give you the greatest success in the market. So that's why I don't believe it's, you know, sort of an inherent quality. I think it's really a different way of thinking. And I absolutely think there's tools out there that encourage collaboration. There's processes out there that I think are very accessible to people.
So I'm going to answer that with another question. Is there anybody in this room who doesn't have brilliant ideas that they'd like to see become a reality? I don't think there is. I think everyone is a creative genius. I think what happens is it gets beaten out of us. That it's too hard to do. Do you ever have this great idea and go, oh man, there's just no way. I got to talk to Jim, and then I got to talk to Mark, and I got to get through that committee. Anybody live through that? So I think that an important role as a leader is to help people understand how they can make those fabulous ideas in their heads a reality.
We were talking at breakfast about the difference in how people react to success and failure for traditional and innovative projects. If you do something traditional and you win, you bask in the glory. You don't bother with the details. If you lose, you pick it apart, like surgery. In the case of innovation, it's almost the reverse. If you win, you do case studies and invite all your friends to your reproduced presentation. If you lose, you sweep it away. You don't take the time to learn from the unsuccessful innovation. So this brings us to the last part of the discussion, which is what are the roles of the manufacturers, the departments, the individuals? What are the how-tos of innovation? How do we get that plus sign in Dan Rome's equation where we add something new and different to what we're doing? And Mark, I'll ask you to start on this one.
Yeah, so, and just commenting on your earlier question about can you teach innovation, I think one of the important things is helping people see when innovation needs to happen, when that point is where if you're doing things the way you've always done, and there's always these questions, yes, but, what else, be able to help people see those spots when innovation needs to happen. And I think, one innovation doesn't make you an innovation guru. I think, it's an ongoing process that you can't suddenly say, I wasn't innovative yesterday, today I'm innovative. It's a constant journey. But and as I said earlier, innovation just for the sake of innovation it just doesn't work. It really has to be driven by a specific need. And as on the client side, we look for vendors to come and present us with innovation that's meaningful. We get lots and lots and lots of calls and visits and with all sorts of new cool methodologies and things. But for me, unless I see how it is really a meaningful, it really fits, a solution that we're looking for, it really does have to be rooted in something.
Okay. Yeah. Charu?
Yeah, and I think, to that point, if you're going to go to bat for something internally and build the buy-in case, you want to make sure it is meaningful. And when I've talked to our clients, just to probe on what is it about something that's innovative that has made you actually pursue it. And I think it's interesting because the responses I've heard, I think, mirror what we do as in the pharma industry. When we are communicating about our products to our customers, we use a lot of evidence-based marketing. So when these researchers are evaluating methodologies, they're looking for that evidence-based aspect of the research. So first, what is the pain point, to Mark's point? What's the need that you're solving for me? Is that really a need that I have? Or is that just something with bells and whistles that it'd be nice to have, but you're not solving a pain point for me. So making sure that you really are overcoming challenges that exist. I think secondly, how are you going to do it? What's the MOA? How is this different than what I'm currently using? Is this just sort of a Band-Aid put on something, or is this really a fundamental difference? What are the benefits I'm going to get? And some of those benefits obviously are emotional, peace of mind and other things, but there's a lot of rational benefits that any new meaningful innovation should give you. How do I quantify that? How do I talk about that to the people that I'm trying to make this case to? And really, what are the clinical endpoints here? What's the efficacy of this approach? Can I trust that this is going to work repeatedly? And so I find it very interesting because I think the same model that we employ with our customers is the same model that we should use when we're evaluating whether something's meaningful. And I think, that's at the individual level. And I really do talk about this kind of case for buy-in. I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to sell this idea internally, and I think if you have those components, you really do have a very robust business case. I think at the institutional level, we work across lots of industries, and one thing I'll mention is that you look at other industries like the consumer packaged goods industry, and one of the things that they've done out of a lot of heartache and commoditization that was going on is they actually created a systematic process for innovation. They call it a stage gate process. And so basically the marketing function from the product inception through, exploring ideas, through selecting those ideas to, refining and launching, they have step-by-step go, no-go decisions. And the whole point of it is to make sure that the best ideas make it through and that people are being held accountable, that marketers are really tasked with, give me the best ideas that are going to maximize success, and we're going to judge this at every point so that we don't go down the rat hole without realizing it. And, I think although making that change tomorrow is going to be very difficult, I think there's definitely small ways that we can start to create that notion, whether it is do something innovative that's meaningful to you, that you can justify, and if it is successful, spread it around. Use it again. Have your colleagues use it. Start to elevate that conversation about how do we create, and I know Mark mentioned kind of having this, phase-by-phase research guidelines. That's great. Maybe it's something that should be a living document, but it really is a place that you capture best practices, because I think that that's how we start as an industry, revamping the way that we go to market and improve upon where we are today so that we can kind of meet the challenges that exist in our industry.
Lisa?
So you had started with the question, what can we as individuals do? What can agencies do? What can corporations do? And I want to start with, don't wait for somebody to do that for you. Do it for yourself. So how do you innovate for yourself, and how do you create a place? Your manager can help create a safe place for you to play, but any one of us can negotiate the terms of our success. So generally, when I'm thinking about doing something different, or the team brings a cool idea forward, we look at where will this help the business. We build the business case, and there are generally a number of opportunities, but you've probably found that your clients, internal and external, have different appetites for change, different appetites for innovation. Don't go after the hard case first. Look for people that you can enlist in this vision. And I heard a great person speak once who said, you're a visionary leader if people can see where you're going. You're simply delusional if nobody can see that path. So I seek to be visionary rather than delusional and help people see that endpoint. And generally how I frame this up is, there's this great idea. Here's how we can get better insights. Here we can do it faster and cheaper. And here are a couple different places I think this would work. Where would you like to try it? So it becomes a choice where the business owners buy into that and they get excited about that. And you can choose. I would generally say don't start with your key launch brands. Maybe pick a smaller one to play with. And as you're doing that, you frame up the business case, you partner with the agency. Again, we're doing this together. Share the financial risk, share the business risk with me down this journey, because the payoff can be pretty great. Biometrics is now a standard part of our copy testing. Wow. A year ago, it was voodoo. So we're in a very different place. But that becomes the second piece of this, which is be flexible about how you sell it. A lot of people go, I've got this great idea, and there's only one way to do it. Flex. There might be another way, a different path you can get down. Maybe it's a pilot, maybe it's a smaller brand, maybe it's giving them some of the old and some of the new for a while before you take that old away, because that's like Linus's security blanket. It's hard to get rid of that. And then tell people. We don't do that. We finish our project, we go, oh, that was great, we did something wonderful, let's go on to the next thing. Tell people about it. Tell them how you drove the business. Tell them how you did something cool. Give everybody credit. Some people you're going to give credit for financing it, for being there to help you through the legal process. Some people you're going to give credit just for not getting in your way. Give them credit, because these are the folks who will come back the next time you have a bright idea, and I'm like, that worked out pretty good for me. I didn't do much, and I got a lot of credit. Where do you need me to sign up? So you're planning for that next phase of this, and measure it. So you can show people what your business results are. So you can show them how you brought them new ideas. So you can show them how they got better as a result of doing this with you, and keep doing it. And we talked about sweeping the mistakes under the rug. I had a team recently do something really cool. And they surprised the commercial team with it. Now, I have younger children, and I can tell you, if they're expecting a McDonald's Happy Meal and a toy, and you take them to a 5-star restaurant, they're not going to be happy. If they know they're going to a nice restaurant and they understand what that experience is going to be, they'll have a pretty good time. But if they thought they were going out and it was, a hamburger and a toy, the entire time they're going to be looking for that. And that's what happened. The team delivered this just incredibly insightful, rich presentation, and the entire time the commercial team was going, well, where's my hamburger? I asked for a hamburger, where is it? So they chopped up the steak and they made a hamburger out of it. But part of it is enlisting them along that process. So we learned from that, and other teams are adopting this really cool way of presenting data. But they're telling their commercial partners, here's what it's going to look like. So here's your checklist with your hamburger and your fries and your toy, but here's all the other cool stuff you're going to get with it. So it's being smart, learning from those things, and don't have an official process, but I've learned, oh, I need to remember to do this the next time I bring forth a really cool idea.
Great. One more try. Comments and questions, and then I've got a few closing comments.
Thanks. One key point you made, is a key word with the commercial team I heard. And in order to innovate, having spent a lot of time in market research, new product analysis, you need to be tied in so tightly with your brand teams. You need to know their significant others, their birthdays, their kids, their pets. If you don't know them and you don't have their trust, you're not going to be able to innovate. For all we joke about the brand teams being these cowboys, et cetera, shooting from the hips, they can be very, very risk averse. They get paid, they keep their jobs on whether or not they hit their numbers. And I just can't emphasize enough, and I'll close with this, you have to be tied in with your brand teams. They have to trust you or nothing's going to happen.
And some of that is building your credibility. Do people think NASA is innovative, cool, doing some cool stuff? No, actually, one or two people do. It's interesting that most of their solutions are a toggle switch, which doesn't seem real innovative, and yet it's fail-safe. They need it to work 99.9% of the time. So they could have some sort of cool Star Trek-y looking system that could break down. The trick to having credibility, whether they know you or not, is to understand their business, understand when a toggle switch is the answer, and when something really different could help them drive business differently. And I think that also is a good segue into how do associations like PMRG and others help you build that case. So you started with a cartoon that said, well, we've never done that. No, we haven't, but somebody else has. And here's what they got out of it. Yeah, I'm trying to throw that over to you.
So I agreed to talk about things at the industry level, but just to rewind a little bit, I'm so glad the trust came up, because in the end, everything that we do comes down to that, the relationships that we have, the people that we trust. It's a people business, so that's certainly foundational, as is the risk that we're facing. In terms of the other question, how do you teach innovation? I think Dan showed us this morning. It's as simple as arithmetic. I'm teaching my 8-year-old right now arithmetic, and it's interesting to see how easy it can be in some places and how hard it can be. But innovation in a really simple way is just putting a couple things together, right? But that's actually the easy part, right? 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, right? There's activities that you guys have done such a great job of describing that we all have to engage in to get to the need and the benefit and the payoff. Still, though, I think one of the things that we can do as an industry, and I can talk about PMRG all day because I've been involved for a number of years, and I'm a big advocate of industry-level activities. Let's, as a group, I'd like to encourage us to come together and tell the stories, because that's what helps innovation spread. Since I've met Jim, he knows that I'm open with ideas. I want to talk with anybody that will listen to me about ideas. I don't want to hold it and protect it. Sorry to bang my mic. I mean, I think you need to be open. Give it away. These things have a shelf life. I actually read this weekend that facts have a shelf life. Can you imagine the things that we believe to be true for only so long, and how that makes change so unbelievably inevitable? So, let's be open, let's collaborate, let's talk about what we're doing and share our stories, and that's what's going to propel us forward. And I think, speaking from my perspective, on behalf of PMRG and other industry organizations, we're here, PMRG is here to help us do that. And it comes full circle, right? If we talk about things at the individual level, the institutional level, and the industry level, how do we get PMRG to help us? Well, we have to step in and help PMRG. So it's a complete circle.
So Tim, when you're talking about PMRG playing a role, and by the way, for the executive leadership, we're not trying to shape policy, but rather open a few ideas here. You're suggesting that either as a forum for discussing innovation or recognizing it, that's part of what you're...
And that's part of what the Marketing Research Award is about. We'll see that tonight at the awards dinner, right? And I think the more that we can do that, lift it up, celebrate it, let people talk about the kinds of things that we want to, that have been done, the better we'll do. Let's be open. Let's share.
Great. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, Dean Cameron at Novartis. I think I look at our company, I see the innovation is there. There's a lot of people doing a lot of great different work. The budgets tend to be there for new and different things, which is great. I think the problem is the silos. I think it's very easy to fall into silos, and we haven't cracked how to make sure that those insights are socialized, that the people who are doing really good innovative work, that's recognized and other people know about it. I think people just get so busy and down in their silo that it's very difficult to look around and have the time to say, let me try and share this. And so it's an issue of silos and also an issue of leadership. But that to me is really the biggest issue around innovation. There is a lot of it going on. It's just how do you make sure we're obligated to share that and make sure that other people in our organization know about it.
Dean, picking up on your comment about silos, it would be nice if organizations built big tunnels between the silos so that ideas could flow and people could be aware. Are there things that you've seen that we can do as individuals that can play the surrogate role, the subterfuge connections?
We had an internal market research summit at Novartis, just across divisions. It was actually shamelessly stolen from what Segmedica does on a yearly basis. That was great, just getting, I think it was 30 people across divisions sitting down and sharing ideas and sharing suppliers and sharing cool things that they've done. Even that's not enough. But it opens lines of communication so that people can email and connect to each other. And I've had people come to me and say, hey, who came up with that great idea? Let me, send me that person's contact info. So you have to, create forums for it and then hope that people hope that lives on.
Anybody want to comment on other ways that we can break down the silos and get more raw material out there for innovation?
Do you have online communities and blogs that are internal to Novartis where you can post? Takes a little bit of extra time, but yeah. You can go out and meet people, have lunch with them, share your ideas, ask for their ideas, sort of the old-fashioned way. You can get up here and talk about it. Go onto external websites, talk about it.
Any other questions?
One of the challenges that I think we face in our organization is as you flatten organizations to eliminate redundancies and things like that, you start to concentrate a lot of the decision-making power in the hands of just a few people. And sometimes just getting your audience with that person to come forward with the innovative idea becomes almost an insurmountable task. I can fit you, the administrative assistant gatekeeper says, I can fit you on the calendar, 2 months from Monday to talk about this idea. So I was just wondering if there are organizations out there that have a way of working around that and bringing innovative ideas, boiling them up to the top decision makers in a very rapid way.
Okay, so I'll give away some of my secrets. I sold a really cool idea by walking up to the president of a division after a town hall meeting and said, I have this cool idea, what do you think of it? And he says, do it. So then I went and told everybody, he said it was okay.
Same comment. It's about trying to be flat, right? That's the new management style, right? Where you can be open and out and wandering around and talking to people, having those no lines, no barriers, just be open and talking. So that's such a great story. That's exactly how to do it. Be flat. Make everything accessible. Make it be accessible.
There are more politically correct ways, too, where you get other people around them in their team, their peers, get them aligned with you, and then it becomes really hard to be the only one saying no.
And the only other thing I would add to that is, also think about exploring innovative approaches when when you don't have to use it right away, because if you do have this sort of lag time to actually getting decisions made, just being aware of what's out there and thinking about where I might use it in the future, you can kind of get on the calendar 2 months out, and so I know it's hard to manage in some cases, but where you can do it, that can be helpful.
I think there was one more question up front. By the way, while the mic is traveling up front, I would like to make a comment that we chose the word catalyst very deliberately for this panel, because innovation is not really about doing everything yourself, taking it all on your own shoulders. It really is a matter of using your vision and your influence to catalyze, if you remember your high school chemistry, a catalyst helps something happen and then goes away. And so that was really one of the messages we wanted to get across.
Hi, Kylie Heap from Clarity Pharma Research. Just wanted to ask a question about how you approach innovation in a sea of preferred vendor lists.
Ooh, wonderful question.
Make it worth my while. Make it an offer I can't refuse. We'll find a way to make it happen.
That's what we sit around the table trying to do. We know that that's the way in,
Yeah.
right? I mean, every preferred supplier relationship that I know of has a back door. And you can approach your friends who trust you with an idea, and if it flies, I mean, it probably needs to be 10 times better than what's currently out there, right, in the current environment. But still, if you can convince people, there is a way through, and that's how we, as a small, very small boutique firm, have had success.
I would also say partner with one of the preferred vendors. So if you come in a partnership, you eliminate one of the barriers. Preferred lists are sort of like being on formulary. Doctors write off of formulary. We work with agencies not on the preferred list. I'm going to be swarmed at the break. But a way through that, because it is a challenge. MSAs get stuck. There's a whole legal process there. But if you partner with one of the agencies that we're already working with, it's much easier. Get creative.
In the spirit of making sure that the poster presentations get your time and attention over lunch, I'm going to blow the whistle on this. I would certainly encourage all of you to talk to any of our panelists over the course of the next 2 days about their views and experiences with innovation, and would encourage each of you to, over the next week, find a way to either be innovative or to reward somebody in your group who is innovative. Doesn't have to be earth-shatteringly new, but something that moves the needle, because that's how we're going to make progress. I'd like to thank the panelists very much and thank everyone for your time and attention.